Educators Lead, episode 127.
In every decision that I make, I truly try to start from the viewpoint or the experience of the child. And then I try to backward map from there, ensuring that we're not making adult problems kid problems. Is it really best serving our students to do it that way, or is it best serving adults because that is our habit? I think trying to be very student-focused in decision-making is what I try to do.
Welcome to Educators Lead, where we interview leaders in education to offer inspiration and practical advice to help launch educators into the next level of leadership. I'm your host, Jay Willis, and I want to thank you for subscribing to our show.
This is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Educators Lead. Let's join my friend Jay Willis and get ready to take your leadership to the next level.
Hello, EduLeaders. Jay Willis here, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Dr. Megan Slocum. Megan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Dr. Megan Slocum has worked as a teacher, principal, superintendent, and is currently the associate superintendent for the Springdale School District in Northwest Arkansas. Megan is passionate about serving students and parents to help all learners achieve their potential each day. She was awarded the Arkansas Rural Education Superintendent of the Year in 2013 and has served as Assistant Commissioner of Education for the Arkansas Department of Education. And then in her spare time, Megan also serves as the Northwest Arkansas Board for the March of Dimes, City of Springdale Leadership Team, and the Health Advisory Council. Whew, that's got to keep you pretty busy.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, so I guess, that's just a brief introduction, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I have two children that I refer to as my take-home kids. David is 16 and Meredith is 11. And so I've got a high schooler and one who is leaving elementary school. And, in terms of work, we've got a lot of things that are going on in the Springdale School District, which is certainly a blessing for us to be able to find better ways to serve students. And so that is truly where my passion lies in terms of how we better connect students to learning and better connect students to education and their future potential.
Yeah, well, so I want to dig in and talk about, this story of your journey to kind of where you're at now. But before we jump into that, what would maybe be something interesting about yourself that most people wouldn't know?
Probably that I don't own a television. I don't have a television in my bedroom and don't watch television.
So it sounds like there's probably a background with that. What's the reason for that?
I think just over time, as I began working on my own personal coursework in my journey to better educate myself, I found myself spending less and less time with TV. And frankly, the things that were on TV were not as interesting. And so I found myself digging into books and research and writing. And then as I entered my work for my dissertation, it became less of an option, less of a luxury item. And I just never got back in the habit. It's just not part of something that's part of my regular day. I'm not opposed to it. And my children often tell me all of the great things I'm missing out on television, but it's I have other things that fill my time besides television.
Yeah, so we were talking, before we hit record, just about news and about all of the devastating flooding that's been going on in Northwest Arkansas, which I was completely unaware of. But a lot of it's because I kind of have the same philosophy. I really don't pay attention that closely to the news because I found, when I was younger and kind of drawn into, you can easily get drawn into other people's lives and even, worrying about what's going on in the news when there's kind of a focus on, there's either focus on, mostly it's probably the bad with an occasional good kind of sprinkled throughout, but they have to make news about something. And so it tends to kind of be the negative things more than the positive things, it seems like.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I think that as we continue to grow as a district, we've gone through a lot of transitions over the years in Springdale School District. And as I continue to grow as a learner, the more that I read and the more that I study, the more I know I don't know. And so it's a desire to want to know more and do more. And so a lot of that time is spent. I love technology, and I love learning about technology and finding ways that we can better integrate experiences for students into the classroom. And so grants come along with that, and other things that come to fill that time. And when I'm finished at the end of the day or in the middle of the night or whatever time it is, my mind just doesn't go to television anymore. And so I tend amazingly to still keep up with major events that are happening in spite of that, which is a good thing. But at the same time, I don't let it consume me. I just found that over the years it had become a nightly routine for me, something that I engaged in regularly. And so when the decision was made, something's got to go because I don't have enough time to do the things that I need to do in the day, that was the thing that went.
Right. Well, how do you feel like that's changed your relationship, I guess, as a parent and, I guess in your own home, what kind of effect do you feel like that's had?
I think it has been, my kids would say that I'm out of style. I think in my mind, I think it has allowed me to be more centered in knowing the directions that I need to go, to give me time to make sure that I'm prayerful, and then make sure that I'm making good decisions, sound decisions for students in our district, and my own kids at home, making sure that I'm making good decisions for them. I think it's also allowed me to have an unfiltered view or an unbiased view in terms of really looking at situations that are happening without the influence of whatever the popular media may think about a particular topic or item. One of the things that we're working through right now is the conversation around 13 Reasons Why, which is a documentary that's been released based on suicide awareness and suicide prevention. And so although I don't watch those type I don't watch television, so I wouldn't have heard about it from social media. There are still things that creep into the system. And so I think it helps me to have a better gauge on what that answer needs to be from the educational perspective. How does this impact students, and what does this mean, and what does our response need to look like to that, if any? Yeah. And I feel like for myself anyway, sometimes the television and staying super plugged into that can sort of be like an escape from reality. So, I can imagine that would be beneficial, like you talked about, just being more centered and focused on living your life instead of kind of escaping from your life. Yes, definitely. I think it's caused me to be more in the moment. It's the same premise behind when my kids and I sit down for dinner at night, we sit down at a table with chairs, with plates and napkins and utensils, and no electronics, no cell phones, no anything. And we just eat dinner. We talk about what's for the day. And it's that same mindset of being in the moment where you are, being and living in that particular moment, being present. And I think oftentimes, as much as I love technology and as much as it is part of my life, and I love to learn and know new and different things, and I am typically the first one to personally, I will go out and purchase something to try it out and figure it out. And I love the discovery of that. I think technology can also create a lot of noise in a system, in your home and in the educational system that doesn't afford you that opportunity to really connect with the people that are around you. And I think that you can, I have been guilty of sitting in meetings in previous years and not really being in that meeting. I'm answering emails, I'm looking at my cell phone, I'm doing all of these other things other than actually in the actual meeting that we're in. And I think that can be really counterproductive, because you leave with a fourth or a 16th of the information you intended to gain from the meeting. And if the meeting is not that important, do you need to be having the meeting in the first place? It really has been applicable in a lot of areas in my life and in my career to ensure that you are actually in the moment that you're in and enjoying that moment, stopping to really take account of the things that are happening around you and being appreciative and thankful for those things. And then finding ways as you are trying to continue to move a system forward and continue to provide opportunities for students to better engage with learning, making them have those moments to unplug and engage away from their cell phones. I often will go to dinner, out to dinner with my kids. We typically do that on the weekends. We'll go out to a restaurant over the weekends. And it is not uncommon for me to look around the restaurant and I see families sitting at tables, but no one is talking to each other and no one is having a conversation and there's no interaction going on. They're so engaged in their phones. It's a loss.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard it. Often it's easy to kind of get caught up and drift along and kind of live the conveyor belt life, right? Where you're just sort of going along and I think it's easy to do that with, social media and with just staying super plugged in with your device versus being fully engaged, like being fully present where you're at.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that's just come from over time taking account and seeing how people are interacting with each other, or in some cases not interacting with each other. And it's even when I'm talking with my own children, they would much rather send me a text message than pick up the phone and call because it's less of a tax on them. And even the way that you respond in text messages, they can take that the wrong way. Like, what's wrong? Why are you mad at me? You used a period. It's like, well, it's in the standard English language. It's part of grammar that we use period. Well, I thought you were mad. No, that doesn't mean I'm mad. So I think a lot can be lost in translation and communication if we have those barriers that are there. So I think it has helped me personally just to be more present in what I'm doing and also to be more joyful in the work that I've got. Liking coming to work, liking to do what I do, loving helping families and students and having a passion for that has helped me to be more focused on what we're actually here to do. And I think sometimes all of those other nuances, although I love them, and you won't see me without a computer and you won't see me without a cell phone, but you have to know how to still engage with those components and tools that are absolute necessities of your job, at the same time allowing you to engage with the person who's in front of you, giving them your full attention or giving the project that you're working on the full attention.
Right. Well, so for people who may not be familiar with your story, maybe if you could start from the beginning, maybe even when you first, either when you graduated from college or when you first started thinking about going into education, and talk about how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, my parents were both teachers. My mother taught English and my dad was a band director. And so the one thing that I absolutely knew was that I would never be a teacher, of course. That I would rise above it. And so I went to college. I ended up dropping out of college because I was going to work and make money. And I did that in a business industry and went through that process of going to work every day. And I remember being in my early 20s, and I had finished some college courses. I'd completed about 2 years of college, which is all I thought I needed. And I remember standing next to a lady. We had gone to get our paychecks upstairs in customer service, and she was standing next to me, and she was in her 60s, and I was in my late teens, early 20s, and we opened our checks, and our checks were the same. And how you try to look, but you don't look. And I glanced at her check and I noticed that hers was pretty close to mine. And I did the math and I thought, I can't be 60 years old and bringing in this kind of income. Like, can I do this for the rest of my life? Is this, it was just a moment for me where I thought, there has to be more purpose for me in this world than doing what I'm currently doing. And so I decided to go back to school, and I started on my finishing up my degree. I decided I'd had an internship assisting and helping in a daycare that was part of the college where I was going. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I thought, this helps grow this next generation, and I need to be helping with that effort. And so I went to school, got my bachelor's, continued on, got my master's, got my curriculum program license, and then got my ed specialist. And at that point thought, I need to continue on. So I continued on with a partner friend of mine who we had been through classes together. She and I continued our coursework, and ultimately obtained our doctorate. And through those experiences, I had some awesome mentors along the way who helped kind of mold and shape and guide me to encourage me, because as you go through your coursework, that's definitely not an easy endeavor. And I had 2 small children, and when I began, I had no children, and then over time, had children, and was working full time, and needed to continue to work while I was trying to work on my degree, and that can be really tough. But I had a lot of good mentors along the way to help guide and shape what that needed to look like. And I remember when I went to go work on my master's, I had finished it, and I had been encouraged by my superintendent at the time to go and work on building level licensure. And I thought, oh gosh, do I want to be a principal? I don't know if I have the desire to do that at all. And I had been a substitute teacher is where I started, and worked in the cafeteria, and then transitioned into being a teacher, and then transitioned into, ultimately I was at that point where I was going to transition into principalship after I'd finished my degree. And that same superintendent said, that's great. Now you need to go, and you need to go get some experiences other than in the zip code. And I remember going back to my classroom. One, I was furious because I thought, here he has encouraged me to go get this degree, and now he's telling me, that I need to go do something else in another district. But at the time, I didn't have the wisdom that he had to know that every single district has its own composition and its own makeup and its own history and its own type of mores that happen within those walls that don't happen in other zip codes. And if you don't have that varied experience, and you're not being willing to be a risk taker to go and get immersed in those experiences, you'll never know what else is out there. And so I was so mad and so hurt, and just thought, I cannot believe I've wasted all this money and now I'm going to have to move. And, and so in revenge, I went and applied. And I took it back to my principal and said, I took it back to my superintendent and said, look what I've done. I've applied. And at the time I was helping in some assistant principal capacity. And he said, that's great. That's exactly what you should do. And it wasn't until after I went out and applied for a job and ended up getting a principalship and moved to another district. I called him about 6 months later after I'd moved, and I told him, I said, you are absolutely right. You were completely right. I had no clue that it was completely different in a different place, and that those are the experiences that help you learn and grow and shape and shift and know better how to communicate and know better how to help different types of students in different types of geographic settings. And so that led to another principalship, which led to superintendency, and then another superintendency. And then I was offered for an appointment with the Arkansas Department of Education, and served in that role as assistant commissioner, which was a lot of fun. And then was offered a position to come back to Northwest Arkansas and work at Springdale. So all of those experiences, had I not had that geographic range, and frankly that range of student experience from the district that I was in at the time when I started teaching, was a primarily white school district with a very low free and reduced lunch population, and so poverty was not a big issue. And so most of our children came to school and could speak English and did come from homes who had parents, and it was a relatively affluent area. And so going from that to my next position, which was 100% free and reduced lunch and almost all Hispanic, it was a huge shift. I had a ton to learn. And so his words and his message of getting better at getting better, it does require you to push your comfort zone. It does require you to be a risk taker and to move to places that you're willing to learn about and want to learn about. And I think you get immersed in different cultures and different environments, and you just it teaches you so much, not only as an educator, but also how to be a better human being, how to be a better mom, how to be a better community contributor, and so he was so very right. And so I've joked with him over the years many times about that story, but he was exactly the type of mentor that I needed at that moment to kind of push me out of the nest and say, go,
Well, so now that you have a decent amount of experience, a good bit of experience, and are kind of in the position that you're in, I guess one of the struggles that sometimes more experienced leaders have when they try to, just offer advice, maybe they see something coming down the pipe that someone new that lacks the experience just doesn't see coming. And so, I guess if you were kind of where you're at now, looking back and speaking to that person that you were back in your 20s, in what way could you convey advice, wisdom, a message, just based on your experience, that would cause a young person to listen to and kind of heed that advice? You don't obviously want to tell them what to do, and you don't want to seem like you don't want them to roll their eyes at you, but you want them to actually just kind of internalize it based on your experience. That there's maybe a more effective way of approaching something or whatever it is. What do you think is the most effective way to encourage people and cause them to want to listen to the advice that you might have?
I teach for universities and teach students who are coming up through the principalship and through the superintendency. And the thing that I have found to be more of a common theme with students who are of that particular age or genre, that millennial generation, is that it is that immediate gratification. It is that I would like to have that now. So, for example, if I'm teaching a course in the superintendency that would prepare, the outcome would be I'm going to have a superintendent license. The thing I think that has been most surprising to me is many of the students that are in that track for the superintendency program have not yet served as a principal in a building.
Oh, wow.
And they are already on this track out of the classroom with their sights set on being a superintendent. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want to aim high, and it doesn't mean that you don't want to set goals. But what it does mean is sometimes when you're taking those advanced courses, you need to be able to depend on those prior experiences to better inform what your conversations are, what your assignments look like, what those outputs are. And so it's very interesting to me the number of students who come through those programs who are interested in going from the classroom into the superintendency. And in Arkansas, we have some provisions that you are required to have some building level experience prior to, but that's not necessarily a quote unquote principalship. But I can tell you, having worked in the cafeteria, having worked as a substitute teacher, having been a teacher in a classroom, having been a principal in a building, that principalship experience is invaluable, and it continually and constantly, pervasively impacts the decisions that I make because of that experience that I had. And so although we all want a fast track, we all want a way to have this job that we think is very alluring and very appealing, you don't always see the things that are underneath the water for what that iceberg looks like if you've not experienced some of the climb to get there. And so my advice would be each of those positions that are in a school district are important and have different components and parts and influences that they play into how you perceive information and how you make the decisions that you make. And when you don't have those experiences that you've lived through, you don't always have the best information to make the best decision because you don't always see all of the sides or angles of what might be potential concerns or potential opportunities that are there. And so my encouragement would be steady, would be to have go slow to go fast. Take your time and really learn the craft, being present in where you are to learn that particular skill set and the tools that particular position offers so that you can be more effective once you reach your next goal or once you reach that next epitome. I think, when I look back, I would be a much better teacher now, having lived what I've lived. I would be a much better principal. I would be a much better superintendent. All of those things have been impacted by all of the experiences that you have. And so steady would be my advice. Be steady.
Well, so I guess in working with millennials and, kind of young people in offering some of those suggestions, is there anything that you found to be an effective way of helping them to internalize that advice?
In the situation of serving as a mentor for students in a college setting, I think having them experience different assignments that bring them to that conclusion and then giving them feedback. And I don't mean in a written form, but I mean literally face-to-face or virtual feedback to say, I want to talk about what you did, and I want to talk about what your product is, and I want you to talk me through it and let me know what you're thinking. What was your thinking behind this? What was your thinking behind that? And then giving them feedback based on that. If you would tweak this, then this could be a potential outcome. Or have you thought about that? And I can give you a specific example. This happened Wednesday night in class. We were talking about millage campaigns and the process that you go through as a superintendent to prepare for a millage campaign. And you have to have lived a millage campaign and had a successful millage campaign or a failure to be able to know the things that you would go back and change. And so none of these students have had that opportunity, obviously. They're in the course. But some of the ideas and things that they brought forward would be that they would be spending particular monies to help with the campaign. And in Arkansas, we have specific rules on what can go in a campaign and what cannot go in a campaign, along with things that they would do that they would encourage and want people to come to the table. So in their effort to want to get the message out and bring people to the table, you're violating state law. And so you've got to have the knowledge of that practice and that process to know why that is a good thing or why that is not a good thing. We had the same conversations with students on how they apply for positions. And so from some of their perspectives, they felt like that they were saving the interviewer or the board members' time when they were going in and were asking for virtual conversations versus going into the interview face-to-face. And sometimes school board members want a face-to-face interaction, so they have had a chance to meet you. And virtually, that's not always possible. Sometimes it means that you're going to have to get on an airplane and travel or get in your car and travel and physically go to the location to meet the people that you need to meet. So that's one. In our district, I think we have a mentoring process in place that our principals and the administrators in this district are great about looking for the next generation of leaders who can move up into the system. But it's that coaching component. It's that providing them experiences to do something beyond the classroom on a district level or over multiple buildings. We serve 23,000 students in Springdale. And so we have 31 schools. And so there's a lot of opportunities for cross-learning and to happen. And so giving students the opportunity and teachers the opportunity to live beyond their classroom, I think also helps them to see maybe a broader picture or have a bigger experience.
Right. Yeah. We talked earlier in the conversation about being fully present. I feel like just kind of what I'm taking out from what you've just shared is that rather than just kind of looking at other people and rolling your eyes at them and their, lack of interest in what it is you're saying or unwillingness to kind of heed the advice that you have, like really the key seems to be you engaging and caring enough about that person to have that relationship, to have those meaningful conversations with them, to give them that meaningful feedback face to face, and not just kind of get up there, do your thing and then leave, but to really engage with those students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's for our students that are in classrooms. That's for our teachers who are trying to expand and continue their own personal learning. I think it's for us as administrators to know that we are always learners. I know what I don't know, and the more I know, the less I know I know. So it is a constant battle. And I think that we all have something that we can teach each other. I learned so much from our students, walking into a pre-K classroom, or I learn and try to be a learner in every capacity from where I am and who I interact with. I try to take away something from that experience. And like we talked about, being present is a big part of that, because I think that you can be very quick to be dismissive of things because of the amount of information we have access to on the internet and through social media. I think that we can sometimes be very dismissive of information that is received, and it could be something that could be very important. So taking that time to go slow, to go fast, to be smooth in the process, to be steady, and ensuring that we're not reactive, but we've actually done all of the due diligence that we need to do about the topic before we make the decision in terms of processing and making the best decision every time. I think that it helps us longevity to ensure that we're making good long-term decisions, and we're making decisions in the short term that ultimately help our students. So I think as educators, if we are willing to be learners and let our students teach us, let them teach us, let teachers teach administrators, and have that symbiotic relationship happening back and forth, I think that is where you truly get to that idea of a community of learners. And everyone engaging and informing the other. Right.
Yeah, I recently heard someone say, if you're not growing, you're dying. And it's just, if you're, and there's really no kind of standing still. I think that sometimes, especially when you're starting off on your leadership journey, you might think, man, once I get to this, then I will, I can take it easier. Once I get here to this position, then I can kind of relax. And what I've just become more aware of in my own personal leadership journey is that if you really want to be effective, you never stop. There's never a point where you just say, oh man, I've arrived and now I can just coast. Because if you're not growing, then you're becoming less effective over time as a leader.
Definitely. And I think that willingness to learn, that willingness to have truly waking up every day, and I say this all the time, and everyone in our office makes fun of me, but truly making today your best day ever, making today the day that you're going to do something amazing and have it every day is an opportunity, and making sure that we're thankful for that and that we're grateful for that and that we're leading in the right way with the right attitude and the right mindset, truly every opportunity that then comes, whether it's a potential negative or a potential positive, is an opportunity. And you have the option to make the best of that and take it forward, carry it forward, or you have the opportunity to get stuck in becoming one of those rim waivers. Rick Wormley talks a lot about rim waivers and what they do and how that works and how counterproductive that can be. And I think that we are all in fear of that failure if we don't, and we aren't looking around the next corner, and we aren't seeking the next thing, and we aren't in this continual mode of improvement, always getting better.
Right. It doesn't have to be huge leaps every day, but if you just become 1% better and the next day you're 1% better, yes. I mean, over time, the compound effect of that is just incredible.
Exactly. It's that idea of the boiling point.
Well, so I guess, on the journey to becoming a school administrator, what were some of the biggest struggles? Because you had, 2 kids at home as you were pursuing?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yes. So juggling that, maybe the schedule, just what were some of the struggles, maybe even either along the journey or even once you got that first position as a school administrator?
I would definitely say time management, the organization of how to get the things done that I needed to get done, not only for the balance of I am a mother first, and then I am a principal or a superintendent, and then I am also a student and going to school and trying to learn. So I think that late nights can be your best friend after kids are in bed. That really does help. I also think it's the working smarter, not harder, finding those opportunities where you can accomplish multiple things with one task is very helpful. It is a sacrifice, and I think that how you react to that experience allows your kids to be able to react to that experience. And when I have teachers or students or administrators who are thinking about, do I want to go on and do I want to work on my dissertation? Do I want to work on an educational specialist degree? Do I want to become a principal? When they're struggling with those decisions, putting it in reference this is all papers. These are all papers. A dissertation is a paper. You have to write the paper. There's components that have to go in the paper, and there's research that goes in the paper, but ultimately it's just a paper. It's a long paper. It takes a long time. It's a lot of work, but it's a paper nonetheless. And if you are waiting for that sweet spot where you're going to have the time to do the things that you want to do to better yourself or to gain more knowledge, there is no perfect time. It's just like when you make the decision as a person to have a child. If you wait for that perfect time to say, okay, now I have the most time I'm ever going to have to raise this child, you would never have a child, or you would never buy a puppy, or you would never do some of those things. There's no perfect time. Christmas is coming anyway. And so knowing that and then structuring your day around those particular things to where you can be the best mom you can be during those times, and you can be the best superintendent that you can be during those times, and then at night be the best learner that you can be. Finding that juggle is important, but you also have to remember it's not terminal. It's not forever. It is a season. It is a very short season. It feels like a long time when you're in the middle of it, when you're seeking a different degree or you're seeking some advancement of some type, but it's not forever. It is short term, and you can structure your schedule around it. And I think we have more technology tools than ever now to help you be more organized and help you accomplish more of the things that you need to accomplish, which is amazing. I would have loved some of those tools when I was working on some of my coursework.
Yeah, it's amazing now what we have just in the palm of our hand, the technology there versus, when computers first came on the scene. It's like, man, it's just amazing how much we can do just with all the different devices that are out there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so, I'm sure you've been in school administration for a while, and I'm sure you have some amazing stories of the impact that you've been able to witness and to be a part of. But what's been your best or one of your best moments as a school administrator?
Best moments. I have a lot of funny moments. I have a lot of terrifying moments, a lot of exciting moments. Let's see, the best moment. I think that still, this is going to sound very simplistic, but there is nothing that gets me more excited about teaching and learning than seeing a student who has struggled with something finally get over that hump and have the understanding that they were trying to seek. And I know that seems very simple. But there is nothing that is more gratifying to watch that smile spread across that child's face, to be like click, like I've got it. That moment of like, this is it. I've figured it out. There's no better feeling than that. Self-gratification, that moment where, and you've experienced it in your life, as you've gone through and you've done different things, creating this podcast and giving a community of learners to come together and having that experience. You've experienced the same thing. So when you have that moment where that child, exactly how it feels and how exciting that is, and there's no money attached with that. There's no electronic attached with that. There's nothing other than just the pure joy of the feeling of an accomplishment, and watching or helping a child to reach that or to have that feeling. It's like there's nothing better. There's nothing that compares to what that feels like. And gaining on those experiences, watching them gain the momentum of that adrenaline rush of like, I've got it, and then being ready and fired up to do the next item or the next thing or the next task. It's like, that is the essence. That's the sweet sauce. That's the essence of what is the most exciting. And I don't care how many times I've seen it and how many times I've helped with it. It never gets old. Like, it never gets old. I could do it every day, all day. It's the best. And so we do really amazing things for students in our district, and we give them opportunity to so many great opportunities, and to be able to travel and to be able to learn new languages and interact. We serve 46 languages in our district, so they are in a cultural melting pot of experience, which is great. But still, no matter the language and no matter the experience of the culture, for me, there is nothing greater than that moment where you've flipped the switch for that child, or they have turned it on for themselves, and it's like you get to watch it, and there's nothing better.
That light bulb comes on for the first time, and you get to see the brightness in their eyes when it happens.
And they're shocked. It's like, did I just do that?
Yeah.
And you did it. It's super exciting.
Yeah. That's neat. A couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to interview someone, Ben Bruni, who was an avid fan of the podcast, and he started listening to it when he was a teacher in the classroom, and now he's moved into administration, and he offered so much credit for his success and ability to deal with a lot of the roadblocks along the journey to him listening to this podcast on a consistent basis. And you talk about just it's humbling, because you're just like, who am I? I'm just one guy who, talks to people, but it's just this amazing feeling where you're like, yes, this is awesome. This is kind of what I set out to do. Yes. And now here's an example of someone who did exactly what I was hoping would happen with this.
And you probably look back on that, and you probably think back to the inception thought where you thought, I'm going to put this on a podcast, and maybe this could help one person.
Right.
Maybe someone will listen. My mom. You probably started something with a very small nucleus, and then you look at what it's grown into, and it's phenomenal. And so I think that it's always good for us to remember it does just take one. It just takes one.
Yeah. I've heard a quote, start where you are, do what you can. What is it? Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, I think is what I've heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And using those tools. You have been blessed with a gift, and you're putting that out to anyone in the world to access, use it, learn from, and then motivate them to do something else. And that is a very powerful tool. And I think that if we can instill that type of innovation and that type of excitement and desire for each of our students, I really do think that we have the generation who can change the world. They can truly make a difference where they are and what they're doing. And if we have that continuum happening across our planet, we will be in a much better place.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, like you talked about earlier, the willingness to take risks, a lot of it just comes down to, like you probably thought at different times, and certainly I thought in regard to this podcast, and just, I'm just one person, what kind of an impact I can make. And yet, when you have these experiences like what you're talking about with students where they have that light bulb come on, or, I have a guest who comes on the show who talks about how much this helped along their journey from being a teacher to an administrator. And you realize, like, you just being willing to step out and take a risk and do it, yes, is what made that all possible. And so if more people just said, look, just took those ideas that they had, instead of dismissing them and saying, what difference can I make? But just saying, you know what, who knows what difference I can make, but let me try. Let me just be willing to take a risk and put myself out there. I think everybody would be amazed at the great things that can happen from that.
Well, and think back to your experience from your own point of view. Did you envision this experience growing to what it is now?
No, not at all. Not to where it is now, no.
And so that's phenomenal. That is the essence of what we are here to do. You want to leave it better than you found it.
Right.
And that's in any position, in any job, in any zip code. It's applicable. You want to leave it better than you find it, and you want to make it great.
Yeah, and I found, and I'm sure that you have too, in the leadership positions that you've held, is that so much of your effectiveness hinges on your perspective being on serving the other person well. Because, at different points in time, of course, kind of along the way, you can either have self-defeating thoughts or self-promoting thoughts, and either one are kind of unhealthy, like where you think too much of yourself or you think too little of yourself. But if you're focused on serving the other person, then you're super effective, and, and then I think your heart's in the right place.
Definitely. Servant's heart is what you need for this work, because there will be days that are definitely challenging, and there will be days that are really uplifting and really great. But you having the internal balance and the internal steadiness to be able to respond appropriately to those things, those bumps and bruises as they come along, it is the difference maker. It is the way that other people, if you are serving as a mentor or role model, and we all are, I think about our youngest students who are in fifth grade, who serve as readers and mentors for our kindergarten students. They don't see themselves as role models, but they most certainly are. And so someone is watching. Someone is always watching, and you can always have an opportunity to help grow and to help uplift someone in the position where they are. And so your job has to be to make sure that you're paying attention and that you're not giving into the noise, keeping a focus on what you're trying to accomplish or trying to obtain, and then finding ways to navigate toward that goal, and then being consistent, having that laser focus, and then producing a result.
Yeah. Boy, I'm loving this conversation. For the sake of time, I know you have a crazy schedule and things to catch up with. So I'm about to jump into some rapid fire questions, but before we jump into it though, I had one kind of specific question that I feel like is really relevant, because I feel like any administrator anywhere at some point is going to deal with some hardship in their community, in their school. And so if you're willing to, I would love to just kind of hear or have you share what has been going on there in your part of the country, and maybe even offer some advice for other leaders as far as how to effectively navigate that when events like that do take place. Sure.
I think that as you serve different populations and you serve different numbers of populations, I think that incidence either increases or decreases. Meaning, when I served smaller school districts, it was less frequent. In the district that I serve right now, for Springdale School District, that can be a more often occurrence, and it is no less horrific when we have tragedy that strikes a school, and that can be in multiple ways through threats to the building itself, or threats to specific teachers or administrators, to lose the loss of a student, the loss of a child, which is the most devastating part of the job that we do. To things where you see a child who had such potential and makes a bad choice, and your job of trying to help get them back on track. And how to do that for them to be successful based on the decisions or the choices that they've made, to social media, to things that are new and upcoming. So I think that can come in many facets. What I think you have to do, the thing that has worked well for me, is knowing the community that you are serving, knowing what is expected in terms of how to support, to where you find that more appropriate line. I'm very much a hands-on person, and if I see a potential problem or I see something happening, my first reaction is I want to dive in and I want to fix it and I want to make it better. But that's not always my role in this position. My role sometimes in this position is to coach the administrator that is closer to the situation, to help them have better clarity to make better decisions and make better calls on whatever that decision is that needs to be made. And I think ultimately we have that duty as superintendents to ensure that we are providing appropriate coaching where necessary and not necessary. We have, in our district, we have 2 assistant superintendents. One is over K-12, K-6, and the other is over, one is over K-5 and the other is over 6-12. And so in those 2 realms, they deal with very, very different issues, not so far apart, but from the root cause of what is actually happening, but very different levels of issues that they have to work through. And so I think the guidance that a district office or a central administrative office can provide to building level leaders is to be supportive and to help them see the multifacets that might be present in that situation. And of course, building leaders often have already thought through some of those questions and already have answers for some of those questions. Well, I've already thought about this, and this is what I'm going to do to circumvent this particular problem, or to try to help and triage this situation or help this particular child. That often is the case, but sometimes you can have those conversations where you might ask it in a different way, or you might try to help them process in a different way that will then bubble up a completely different solution. And so ultimately, as you're navigating the waters of whatever the situation is, whatever you're dealing with, I think communication is key. Knowing your community is key. And then knowing when to step into the situation and when to not yet step into the situation is also really important.
Would you mind, just to kind of jump into that a little bit, would you mind sharing just kind of what's going on, like kind of with the flooding and the event that took place, and then maybe a couple actionable or specific things that you're doing to kind of help the community heal from that?
Well, in Springdale, we experienced some flooding, and the flooding rains came, and it produced a lot of low-level areas that experienced flooding, which is not typically a norm for us in Springdale. We're located in northwest Arkansas in some mountainous regions, and so we have typically don't have experience a lot of flooding that's happening. And unfortunately, we lost a student in that the child was home for the weekend, and she lost her life. And So our reaction to that is, how do we support the family? How do we support the principal where that child went to school? How do we support the teacher who had that child in her classroom? How do we support all of the teachers in the building as a whole? And ultimately, most importantly, how do we support the students who are still in that building? What does that look like? And how do we ensure that they have the things that they need? So communication is definitely part of that process, ensuring that we have counselors who are available in the building and on standby to assist with whatever the needs are, being supportive of the family as they go through such a horrific tragedy, and ensuring that they have what they need to be able to try to assimilate and begin to process what has occurred, and the same thing for the students and the teachers and the administrators, ensuring that they have the appropriate support and feel the appropriate support to be able to appropriately react as the events, as the tragedy continues to unfold. And it's something that you wish on no administrator and no teacher, no educator, and no parent, no colleague, no friend. You don't want those experiences to be part of the educational system. But unfortunately, those things are present, and they do unfortunately happen. And so having that servant's heart, determining where you can fit within that process, praying and making sure that you're asking for the right peace, and asking for peace for the family and peace for administrators and teachers as they navigate through such a tragedy. It's absolutely horrific. But communication is the key, and support, going into support after such a devastating event for all of the people that are involved, because it's always so impactful, so much beyond that one event. It is definitely a horrific experience, and you want to make sure that you're there to help and assist in what is needed. And that doesn't necessarily mean hovering, but you can help and let them know that you're here to support them and what they need.
Yeah, I feel like so much of this conversation has been focused on really, caring and having that servant's heart.
Yes.
And keeping that perspective.
Definitely.
Well, so I'm going to roll through some rapid fire questions if you're ready for those.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so first off, what would you say is the best leadership advice you've ever received?
Process.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Taking time to think about a situation and not be reactionary. Sometimes things are superficially not what they are until you get further in the conversation to realize that what you thought was there was not actually there. So taking time to research, taking time to gather information. There are times, and I know we spoke about tragedies earlier, there are times where you are not afforded that processing time. The event occurs and you have to react. And of course, you want to take appropriate action as necessary. But if it is not an emergency situation, and it is not something that is life-threatening for someone in the organization, taking the time to really know the facts and research the facts, to ask the right questions, to really synthesize and get to the essence of what is being asked or needed, or whatever the issue is, definitely is important. And I think that grows on you as you become more mature, as you become more experienced in the roles that you serve in. I think that you realize the importance of that more and more over time. And that's something that I have definitely had to learn over time, because I have definitely made poor decisions. I think back to the first year that I taught in my classroom, and I just think, you cringe. You have those moments. I think back to decisions I made as a bright green principal, and I think, if I could have done that differently. Hindsight is always 20/20. So you can help to inform what hindsight is if you take the time to process on the front end, so that you have the facts that you need to have to be able to make the decision you need to make.
That's such great advice. It seems like, at least me, probably nobody else ever out there, but me, I often want to make assumptions quickly.
Yes.
And man, I've so many times I have made an assumption and then I've acted based on that assumption. And almost every time I live to regret it, because usually I don't have all the information. I'm not seeing the whole story. And often I've just taken kind of a completely harmless situation and I've suddenly caused it to explode and become a huge issue.
Yes, awesome. You say, good for me. I actually made that worse. Perfect. In my efforts to help and my efforts to get out there and be like, yay, I can fix it, because that's what we want to do as teachers. We want to repair. We want to make it better. You've actually made it detrimental, and you're like, how did we actually get here? Removing that noise from the system, being present and being in the moment, and then making sure that you really give the opportunity for due diligence to occur, to truly try to determine all of the sides and all of the factors. And even still, you can do that, you can take the time to do it, and you can still make poor decisions. That doesn't mean it's going to be perfect every time, but you at least have the solace for the guilt fest that will follow and ensue, that at least you tried to do the very best that you could do.
Right. Yeah. Coupled with that is the patience to, be willing to bite your tongue and just be patient and let all of the facts come out before making assumptions, making decisions, saying or doing something that, based on those assumptions.
And I think it's part of that immediate gratification world that we've, you can have it your way, any way you want it, anytime you want it, in any zip code you like. We really have become such an Amazon society. And I'm a Prime member. I love Amazon. It will be at my house in 2 days. That's the best news ever. But we've become so entrenched in our society and our world, becoming so quick and such rapid fire, in the sense that we sometimes don't always process as much as we should to make the decisions that we need to make, so that we don't make multiple poor ones, but we make one good one.
So what would you say is probably your biggest strength as a school administrator?
I don't know. I think that I try to keep the focus on students in every decision that I make, or every reasoning or research that I approach. I truly try to start from the viewpoint or the experience of the child, and then I try to backward map from there to see, ensuring that we're not making adult problems kid problems. And we like to do that a lot in education, in terms of maybe it's something simple like changing a schedule or changing a driving route or something. Well, we've always done it that way. Well, is it really best serving our students to do it that way, or is it best serving adults because that is our habit? And so I think trying to be very student focused in decision making is what I try to do.
All right, that's great. As a parent, sometimes our son, especially, he's 10, and he'll kind of point out, he'll say something. He's very sensitive and very, I say sensitive. He's just very kind of aware. And so sometimes he notices and he says, gosh, I feel like I'm making this more difficult for you, or an inconvenience or a burden or something along those lines. And I just kind of turn to him and I say, if I wanted convenience, I wouldn't have had children.
Like that, we were talking earlier about when is the right time to have a child. Like, there's no sweet spot for that. It's just part of life.
Right.
Yeah, that's
right.
Absolutely right. And that sensitivity is what will serve him so well later in life, to be able to have the compassion that he needs to have for others. And that is a quality that is lost. That is often lost. And in that race of trying to be first and trying to be best and trying to gain that end result faster and better and quicker and all of those things, compassion has to be part of the conversation.
Right. Otherwise you leave like a wake of carnage in your path. You like accomplish all these great things, but if you look back, you've destroyed everything else.
Yeah. A friend of mine said it's awesome to go into a fight with a really sharp sword, but it doesn't help you very much if you're the one that lands on it. So That's always in the back of my mind. It's pick your battles, and it's if you are going in for something that you feel like is very important, do your research first and make sure it's really important, and make sure that is this really what is best for students? How does this impact and improve student learning? How does this impact and improve student achievement? And if it doesn't answer those questions as an educational institution, which is the business that we're in, then it might not be the right direction or the right call for you to make.
Right. Well, so is there a book or two that you would recommend to other school leaders that have made a big impact on you?
Oh, gosh, that's so hard. I love Mickey Alkaku's books on kind of the brain and how the brain works and advancing the brain. He's great. He does. He's just got some really great stuff that's out. I think it's his The Future of the Mind is his latest one, but it talks about artificial mind and silicon consciousness, which is kind of what we've been talking about, being present, being an expert in your field and what that looks like. And so he's got some amazing things that I think he has to share. I also still love Tony Wagner. Most Likely to Succeed is one of my books that I really enjoy, but there's so many good authors out there. That's two that I think definitely are in my top.
Yeah. So when do you make time to read?
When I'm not watching television.
Right.
I do it a lot in the evening. I think that reading, everything goes back to reading. Everything goes back to ensuring that we are keeping up with the latest information and the latest research, knowing, if we know better, we do better. And so knowing is reading. And so ensuring that we have time to do that, dedicating time to do that, ensuring that kids see you reading and your own kids see you reading, and taking time to be aware of what research is saying and where trends are going, and being able to share that information. I think there's so many good authors that are out there. We've been working a lot with Dr. Karen Hess, who works with Webb's Depth of Knowledge, and she has so much good information to share, so many good insights in the process of curriculum and instruction. And I think those other two authors that we talked about also do.
Well, so what advice would you have for an administrator as far as working with the students that they serve?
I would say patience and taking time to really get to the root cause of why they are potentially having disciplinary infractions. If it's that type of situation, if it's a mentoring situation, taking time to mentor students. It's that saying that I don't remember what you said, but I might remember how you made me feel. And I think that we've all had teachers in our lineage, in our past, as when we were students, who made us feel particular ways. And I can think of one teacher off the top of my head right now who is a great resource for me as to what not to do as a teacher. I had a really terrible time in her classroom. It was not a great experience, but I learned a lot from it. So every experience teaches you something. I've also had teachers in the past that have been great mentors to me. My second grade teacher, Miss Magnini, I remember thinking, I want to be just like Miss Magnini. She is wonderful. But she made everyone feel welcome in the classroom. She made everyone feel part of the classroom. She made everyone feel important and tall and all of those great things. And that's what we should be doing as educators. So being mindful of the words that we speak, how we speak them, when we speak them, and the impact that our words have. It can really be detrimental to a child if we're not careful, and also to adults, because adult learners are no different. So treating people with respect and kindness and care, you can say the things that you want to say, and you can get the message across that you need to get the message across in the right way, using the right words. And I think that's applicable to teachers working with students. I think it's applicable to principals working with teachers and for administrators working with all of those groups. It's important. What you say matters.
Right. Or it's true as a, husband speaking to his wife, as a, father speaking to his children. There's so many areas that's applicable.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, so kind of along those lines, what piece of advice would you have for, as an administrator, especially as a district level administrator, as far as working with the school level administrators and also with the other teachers?
Okay, let me make sure I understand. Words of advice for administrators as they work through potential problems, or
just in general, just kind of what advice would you have for an administrator as far as working with other school administrators and then other teachers?
I think one is remembering that the work that administrators do and the work that teachers do, it does matter. It does have an impact. And I think we lose so many excellent teachers and so many excellent administrators to other industries for various reasons. And so one, I would say, would be to ensure that you have a great group of colleagues that you surround yourself with who kind of become your sounding board for different issues. I know that I've got a group, there's about 5 of us, and we constantly talk and text and are sorting out problems that are happening in other districts and other parts of in other zip codes, but the solution sometimes can be closer to home. And so ensuring that you have a good structural support network, and that's not only through colleagues and mentors, but how do you do that at home, and what does that home structure look like in terms of what supports do you have in place there, whether that's friends or wives or husbands or family members or someone to serve as that sounding board. Because I think that one of the things in a district position and in a classroom or in a building, whatever your position is that you hold, it comes with its own level of stress. And I think that the more advanced that you become in your area of supervision, meaning the more people you are responsible for obtaining this education, or the more people that you work with, those stresses can increase based on that number, depending on what is happening and what's happening with them and what needs they need to have met. And so remembering that that you have the opportunity to drown the noise out where you need to, finding the way to turn down the volume on those things that are not as important, and then turning up the volume on the things that are important, and that's the people. There's a lot of distractors that are out there in terms of noise that's happening around you, and how do you keep a focus on what you're actually to do, and that is to be a good human. And then your ultimate goal is, how do we produce more good humans? How do we ensure that they're contributing members of society, and that they're prepared for the workforce, and they're out and contributing along with you to the greater good. And so keeping a focus and keeping calm, I think. Making sure that you are present, and making sure that you are calm and have that good structure, that good support network, helps to ensure that you have a good surrounding group that supports you through the process, whether you're in the classroom or at the building level or the district level.
And I'm sure that collaboration, that group of people that you kind of bounce ideas off of, and sort of your support group, I'm guessing, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm sure that helps you kind of stay centered. Definitely.
In terms of sometimes I will think like, this is the best idea ever, and I can't wait to tell them. And I think, oh, it's 2:00 in the morning. They're probably asleep, so I'll wait until 6:30, and so then I'll send it out, and then one of them will send something back like, that's awful. Like, that will never. Like, this is a terrible idea. You shouldn't do that. And here are all the reasons why. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that's kind of good.
Dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah. Someone to help you process some great idea that you have in the middle of the night. Might not be such a great idea. It's that thing we were talking about when you start teaching, and then you're in the classroom and you think, oh, gosh, if I could go back and teach that lesson again, I would do that so differently. Or if I could have changed my response to that, I would have done that so differently. It's learning, though, and we're all learners. And that's the thing I think you have to remember, no matter the position that you hold, is we are all learners, and we are all working and striving to learn more. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. Well, so last question I have, if you had a time machine and you could jump in it and go back to the point in time when you first made the decision to go into school leadership, what advice would you go back and give to that younger version of yourself?
That would be so fun, first of all. Like, how fun would that be? So I would go back and tell myself to have patience, to not be in such a hurry, and to enjoy the process or enjoy the journey along the way. Enjoy the small things, the little things that happen along the way that you don't sometimes take a moment to like sit back and laugh about, laugh more. Every day has great potential, and it's up to you to determine if you're going to reach it.
Yeah, boy, that's great. You know, it kind of reminds me, this morning as I was leaving for work, my little girl came out and she like peeked out the window and she started waving at me and like saying, "Bye, Daddy." And then I kind of looked back as I was walking away, and my wife texted me and said that she was in the house saying, "I love you, Daddy." And I was just, thinking about that moment, and I was thinking, it's funny how we think all of this is so limitless, and yet how many times will I see her face peeking through that window, waving at me, and before I know it, she's going to be going off to school and then off to college and then getting married, all that, and it's just taking the time to really enjoy, to be fully immersed in those moments and fully enjoying and being present in those moments, I think is so critical. Yes,
and I think that is often lost on a lot of us. We get so focused on the things and the immediacy of the needs that are there right that second, and it can cloud. It creates that noise in the system that doesn't let you see. How old did you say your daughter is?
She's 3.
She's 3. So at some point, that's not as exciting to run to the window and wave to Daddy goodbye. So you've got to cash in on those moments and think that's precious, and enjoy those moments as they come. There are, I have, as I said, a 16-year-old, and he rarely runs to the window to wave at me to tell me goodbye. I would love to rewind that button.
Yeah.
For him to go back to those days where he would do those things. Now it's have you taken a shower, and would you please take a shower? So I think it's about having that emotional connection with people and truly being present where you are, and being centered where you are, and then determining how can you be a blessing to what is occurring and not be a hindrance, and then trying to move that forward.
Yeah, great advice. Well, so, finally, I guess if one of our listeners wants to reach out to you after the show, what would be the best way to connect with you?
Yes, by either phone. You can reach me at 479-750-8800. Our website is www.sdale.org, sdale.org, S as in Sam.org. And then my email address, of course, is mslocum@sdale.org. So any of those ways. I typically do have my computer somewhere close, so email. We're in different buildings a lot and in different meetings a lot, so email is a fast way. But you can go to our website, check it out. We've got some great curriculum that we've been working on and building, and so I'd encourage your listeners to go and look at the curriculum that's available there. All of it's free. You can access it and pull it off and use it as your own, and make it what's best for your students in your district.
Great. Now I'll make sure to share that link on the show notes page as well. EduLeaders, this has been a great interview today. For the show notes of today's show and other resources, visit educatorslead.com and type the word Megan, M-E-G-A-N, into the search tool to find her show notes. Megan, thank you for sharing your journey with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that wraps up another episode of Educators Lead. This podcast is brought to you by Mometrics, the #1 test preparation company. Mometrics offers study materials for over 1,800 different exams, including the SAT, ACT, GED, end-of-course exams, state standard exams like the STAR, teacher certification exams, advanced placement, CLEP, ASVAB, GRE, and so many more. Mometrics takes the mountains of information students could be tested over for any given exam and boils it all down to just the fluff-free golden nuggets of information that are most likely to be on the exam. They couple that with some great study tips and test-taking strategies to help students maximize their test scores. With their interactive tutorial videos and a layout that makes lesson planning easy, Mometrics study guides, flashcards, and practice questions are a great fit for individual or classroom use. To learn more about our products and our vault of hundreds of free tutorial videos, please visit educatorslead.com/test prep. That's educatorslead.com/test prep. Edu Leaders, thank you for joining us on Educators Lead. Visit us at educatorslead.com for everything we talked about today, free resources, and much, much more.